I'd like to call to order the Lane County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, March 10th. And the first item is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to public comments. And we have 2 people signed up for public comments so far. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. And if you wouldn't mind stating your name and the city you're from for the record, and then your 3 minutes will begin. The first person is Dennis Smith, followed by Sarah Smith. So if you'll come up to the podium.
Just I sit down?
No, the podium right there.
So, clock is ticking.
After you state your name and
I heard that this is a 3-minute thing, and it usually just takes me 3 minutes to say hello. So,
well, if you'll state your name and the city you're from for the record.
First,
state your name and the city you're from.
My name is Dennis T. Smith. I'm a resident of Fall Creek. Been out there for 40 years. I have 12 acres of land that I'm very proud of. Built our own home. My wife is here with me.
Awesome.
I'm here reluctantly because the situation that I'm here is because of something that's happened to our daughter, who was born in that house, who I delivered myself in 1989, and who we love immensely. Now, if I get emotional, please excuse me. This is not easy. Now, let's see. Well, first of all, I'm a veteran of Southeast Asia, 4 years in the Air Force. Worked for the Forest Service and the BLM for 35 years. I'm retired from the BLM. In fact, we used to have our district meetings here in this room back in the 80s. That's a nice room. Let's see. Well, it was on March 4th, just the other night, about 4 in the afternoon. Our daughter's been housed at the Hearing Center over here on Coburg Road. It's a lockup facility. I use that term not loosely. It is a lockup facility, unfortunately, for people that are mentally ill. There's 12 patients, 24 workers. It takes 2 people to guard 1 person in there. Pretty serious business. Most of these people are sedated to the point where they don't need much guarding. And if you've read the articles that came out subsequently to the inspection by the state officials there on March 4th, one of the inspections, the paper seemed to lean on blaming the patients for the escaping from the place and blah, 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 and it always falls back on the patients. Well, in my mind, it falls back on the supervision. Being an old supervisor, it falls back on the state of Oregon and the way they operated this exercise. We have the privy as parents of an adult child, she's 25, the right through the Information Act that she signed to be called and told and notified of what goes on when something of this nature happens, such as the removal of the people from the facility. In the cloak of darkness, by the way, my friends, this reminded me of some kind of thing out of a German movie, in World War II. I showed up there because my daughter called at 4 o'clock. I said, well, we better at least go down there and see what's going on and say goodbye if nothing else. So, because she said, they're going to move me. They're moving me somewhere. And I go, where? I said, I don't know. So we go there, and it's evening is coming on, and there's 3 black cars parked out front, paddy wagon-looking police cars, and there's a gentleman standing there. So I was, dressed halfway decent, and I went up and I confronted him. I said, what is going on? And he was cordial with me, and I wasn't aggressive. I know him better to not be aggressive in these situations. And he said that everybody's being removed from all the patients are being dispersed throughout the state to other places, 12 patients. Basically under the cloak of darkness, without any parents being called, such as us, or any concerned people. The county showed up. because they supervise, your county, our county, supervises this facility through, they're a subcontractor, shelter care. And then the state oversees as a monitor of the county. I think that's the hierarchy here. And so in this case, I said, well, I'd like to know who your supervisors are so I could call somebody and at least get some information, because everybody goes, we can't tell you anything. And yet I'm privy to the Information Act, right? Supposedly. All of a sudden that stopped because of this act by the state. And so I said, okay, well, I want to at least say goodbye to my daughter. And I personally was ready. Anyway, I'm a little bit angry. I have a strange way of showing anger. So what I'm asking you guys, or you gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, is to do something about this. You know, I'm an honest taxpayer. All I can do is vouch for myself and our family. We pay your salaries with our taxes. We pay the state's salaries with our taxes. I'm a retired federal worker. They paid my salary with taxes. We need to honor what we're here for, and that is for compassion and to help people and not warehouse them and then pull stunts like this and approve of it. It's wrong. That's all there is to it. And I would like to argue with anyone who will defy this. I would welcome that argument. So my request is, and I'm sorry if I appear not humble enough, but for you folks to put this on your agenda for the future, to consider working on it and include some of the members of the public who are involved citizens such as myself. I don't know if I'm very reluctant to be involved, but due to my own need for privacy, but for people that are fathers and mothers of these people that care, that they need to be a part of these policies, because there's a lot of flaws. I can't go into all that right now. My wife is going to talk here now, because I know I have 3 minutes, and I don't want to wear you out. But I was driving into town, and I heard that song by Bruce Hornsby called "That's the Way It Is," and you guys all know that song. We don't want to live that way here. This is a county where the word organic came from, where recycling came from, where some great things have happened. And I don't see why we can't get together and do something for the mental health situation in this county, because it's definitely way on the back burner. And so that's my request to you. I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I think the chair is going to give me the ability to just address you. If you don't mind, I wanted to respond to you. We normally do it after public comment, but I wanted to share. I have forwarded your email or your wife's email to me last night to everybody. This morning, in the agenda team, myself and the chair met with our administrator and our legal counsel. They're aware of this, and they promised me they're going to look into this. As everything's really complicated. Who has authority? Who doesn't have authority? What was the situation? So it's really good right now to get the facts and understand it. But I promise you, this is a high priority of mine. I've been working on another situation similar to this in mental health, and so I've been working with staff. I assure you, the administrator. I've asked him if it's appropriate that we have an update on this next week. It's not only the situation that you're dealing with personally with your daughter, but we also have a situation where we have our housing and HACSA, Housing and Community Services Agency, who's essentially funded this facility, has a large investment in it that has to debt service. We got to understand, without patients there, how do we make the debt service? So I'm confident that our administrator is going to bring this to us, and that we'll be active in trying to find a solution, and hopefully we don't have to see this type of situation happen again. So,
well, and it's not just for my daughter; it's for all the daughters and sons, all of ours. And one last thing, that you reminded me of. Next week we are going to New York City, my wife and I, not on a frolic, but to attend an international conference regarding psychosis and psychiatry and the improvements over the last 21 years. It's been 21 years since they've had a conference of this nature. They're having it in Manhattan, and Sarah might say something about it. She's been invited, and so she invited me to come. And I want to take good news from my home. And this is good news, what you're saying. I want to take some good report, because we're going to have workshops there, and they're going to be talking with all these people from all over the world. And I want to be able to say Lane County is trying to do something, and we are, you know, this is, I think, an opportunity, a very interesting moment to where in this conference happening, and we're going to be some sort of ambassadors for our county. And so thank you for that. And please continue, and let's get this thing going if we can. You know, try to clean up whatever problems there are.
And if you have other questions, you got my email address. Just send me your concerns.
So you're our commissioner in the East Side, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Good. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And Ms. Smith, did you want to address this also?
Thank you. My name is Sarah Smith, and I want to add some words about our daughter and our experience in Lane County's mental health system for the record. One thing my husband forgot to mention, and by the way, excuse me, I work for a Training Veterans Project. So I just wanted, and maybe I will add to that this summer the National Guard is sending 1,200 Lane County residents back who've served in overseas combat deployments, and so we can't talk enough publicly about the issue of mental and emotional issues and the kind of services we're going to offer to our citizens. What I want to add to my husband is that our daughter was sent to Umatilla, which is a 5-hour driving distance from here approximately. We experience time and time again when our daughter was here locally at the Hearing Center under the supervision of the shelter care staff, barrier after barrier to having normal visitations with our daughter. Family is important to recovery from mental illness. Barriers to seeing a loved one is traumatic for everyone, not just the person receiving the mental health services, but for the entire family. So in some ways, I won't even miss the Hearing Center, but then I wonder what's going to replace the Hearing Center. Is it going to be better? Is it going to be the same, more of the status quo? Is it going to be better? Umatilla is so far away. In my opinion, it violates the Federal Olmstead Act, which says that communities must provide services within their community for people and avoid warehousing people. The thing that I'm asking you is to form a work session on this issue, and with the greatest possible haste. And I understand, Commissioner Stewart, you said it's very complicated. The ownership of the facility is being sorted out. The contract is that Lane County going to be sued by the state of Oregon if Lane County, through its contractor Shelter Care, failed to meet the minimum standards of care for people with psychiatric disabilities, to the point where it endangered people's safety. What does that mean for Lane County? I mean, this is a state audit. Is it just one facility? Is it an ongoing issue? Are there other places that are violating? I'd like to hear from non-biased, independent people looking into this, what's really going on with the delivery of mental health care services in Lane County. And another thing, I'd like to know about the state of Oregon with the building of the large Junction City Hospital. Does this represent a consolidation of mental health dollars at the state level to the detriment of community-based mental health care services? So I'm asking the work session not only to look into this issue of the closing the Hearing Center and the process that was used, but to look at the big picture. What are the trends of mental health? Where do we want to go? What are the questions we want to ask? We're not dreaming big enough when it comes to mental health. We want to be the community with the best mental health delivery system in the world, in my opinion. And we can do that, but we have to work together, and we have to work in a collaborative, transparent manner to build that. It needs the input of consumers, psychiatric survivors, family members, state employees, Lane County employees, clinicians. We need a collaborative, community-wide dialogue, and it has to be democratic and open, because this is an urgent situation, and just shoving it under the carpet is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board? You'll state your name and the city you're from for the record.
My name is Reverend Wayne Martin. I'm a retired United Church of Christ pastor and clergyman. I live at 1223 Washington Street, not many blocks from here. I am doing what I'm doing as an advocate for the homeless because I care about the crisis of housing and the people most affected by that crisis, the homeless. There are thousands of them who slept illegally in Lane County last night. I want to say thank you to the parents that just testified, because they are describing a good number, as many as 40% of the homeless population. I do what I'm doing now because the mandate to help the poor is unmistakable in the sacred books of Judaism and Christianity, as well as the teachings of Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, and the teaching of native religions throughout time. It's a consistent social justice platform in these books. I've tried to show persistence and patience in my endeavor, and I'm now beginning to feel encouraged by a number of things, and I want to say thank you. The year-long efforts by a group called the Nightingale Health Sanctuary to find a location for a homeless camp with an emphasis on people helping people, especially those with disabilities. I've been on the steering committee since its inception. We're so grateful to many in this room, and particularly the board and the staff of Lane County, for your support. I'm also cheered by the efforts of the city manager and the staff to find solutions for housings for veterans, and especially to show help for more and more homeless youth. Those efforts are starting to make a difference. I'm definitely thankful for Chief Kearns, because he's assigned Lieutenant Dave Knapp to be in constant communication with me about those living in unsanctioned camps around Eugene. And finally, with the help of some business leaders in my church, I have had the chance to meet with their colleagues in the commercial real estate sector, along with Terry McDonald of St. Vincent de Paul's in those conversations. They had some promising signs. 2 or 3 ideas were offered, and some groundwork is now being laid before we meet again. One of them involves river keepers. I'll not say more about that until I have more to say. It's too soon, but I'm grateful and hopeful for these conversations and the open dialogue. There will be more of them. If there are business people with creativity and compassion that you know about and who want to be a part of this discussion, please send me an email, Wayne Chaplin at netzero.com. That's Wayne Chaplin at netzero.com. And I will be happy to include these business people in our discussions. Again, I thank you for the inspirational work that you did to find us a place for Nightingale.
Thank you, Reverend. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to Commissioner's response to public comments or other issues or remonstrance. And I'm going to jump in the queue first here, because there were some questions asked by the Smiths that I want to specifically address. I can't address specifically some of the situations at Huron because it is still under the factual investigation phase. We don't know all the facts, and I don't want to misstate what's going on there by addressing that directly. But what I will say is I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony this weekend of the state hospital in Junction City, and I've been involved in getting that facility open for the last 5 years with Representative Hoyle and many other people. That facility was originally scheduled to be 300 beds, and it was trimmed back to 174 in recognition that there needs to be investment in community-based mental health, and that was all that was really needed at that level of care for the state, is the total of the 600 beds in Salem and the 174 down here in Junction City. Of those secure treatment beds, that's the highest level of treatment, and most intense level of treatment we have. What's interesting about both the new Salem facility and this facility is it's designed to move people from that level of care down into lower levels, community-based level of care, and ultimately home. And and we had a patient address us from the state, the Salem facility, that's actually going to be moving down to the Junction City facility, and I was so impressed with that patient's ability to speak and talk about, how he could now talk about his mental illness when before he was ashamed to, and how much the staff had helped him help himself. And it is something I think the state recognizes. One of the things I don't talk about too much is my stepfather was a psychoanalyst. My sister's a psychiatrist that practices in Corvallis. We are very much in touch with the mental health issues. This board is. In fact, we actually, Lane County helped ask the Association Oregon Counties to draft a bill that was basically modeled after the Justice Reinvestment Act that passed last session, House Bill 3194, that was going to try and prevent people going into the prison system by investing in prevention and post-prison programs. Have a similar program on the mental health side that was trying to prevent people from ending up all the way in that heavier treatment, more secure treatment, and keep them out of our jail system, out of our legal system, and get them treatment early. And this applies to the homeless also, in having the state add to their investment in mental health. That bill was drafted as a legislative concept and is actually kind of sitting in Senator Courtney's office right now. So if you want to help us have a better system, I would recommend that maybe you also bring some of your concerns to the state legislators and even the Senate presidents. Bring those concerns to him, because I think that's part of the solution, as it's the statewide system and a very important system. I think this board is focused on that issue, and in fact, one of the reasons why we chose the siting for the Nightingale's rest stops is it's outside of our mental health facilities, and there was an opportunity for some crossover between the population there and our treatment folks. So I believe we do take this very seriously, and that said, we are going to be looking into this. I imagine it may be during executive session next week, because it may actually have legal ramifications for the county and the state that we need to discuss in that manner. But I'm sure you'll be hearing more about it as time goes on. Also, there's an issue with confidentiality of patients that we have to deal with also. But we do take this very seriously. We do have a commitment to community-based mental health, and that's what we hope to be moving forward. And the new Junction City Hospital is actually the state's investment in that system, in that hospital is designed to feed people back down into the community health system. And we even got a letter from the federal government, the state did, saying that that building that facility was in line with our ultimate plan to meet the Olmstead Act. So that it's all part of the system, and we're all working towards that. And I know that our board here is very committed to providing that community care, and hopefully we can show that in the next months and continue to do so. And we will be definitely looking into the situation that affects your family immediately. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Martin, Reverend Martin, you're probably aware that Mayor Piercy and I attended the regional meeting on the Mayor's Challenge up at HUD on April 27th. Some great things are happening there. I want to thank you personally for all the work that you have done to gather as many resources together at the same time, and that really helped focus my attention and other folks on the board attention on needs that we've had. As you know, Mr. Mokrahajski stepped forward and found the spot for us for the rest stop, and it came within about a 24-hour period of asking for it. So I want you to see that the county is highly responsive. And as Commissioner Bozovich stated, the siting of that rest stop and whatever happens down the road as far as rest stops, opportunity village-like projects will always be close to services. So, and to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, I have children, and when you said you were angry, Mrs. Smith, I thought I saw tears in your eyes, and it really brought tears to my eyes too. It's an untenable situation that you're facing. And as Chair Bozovich and your commissioner, Commissioner Stewart, stated, they're the leadership team of this board right now. They're the agenda team, and they are highly attuned to what's happening. Also, I'll point out that each one of us as board members have open doors. Anytime you wish to come and speak to us individually, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I think the chair allowed you probably closer to 6 or 7 minutes today. That's not enough time to state all that's going on inside of you. So please feel free to contact me, and I think all the other commissioners feel the same way, that if you need to say more and say more, do not hesitate to come forward. Also, I'll mention that we have a mental health advisory committee for the county, and we meet once a month, and that mental health advisory committee is made up of professionals plus me. So it's I say that because I'm not a professional in mental health. I pay a great deal of attention to it, but you're welcome to come and provide testimony there also, and you'll find some very accommodating listening ears if you were to come to the Mental Health Advisory Commission and make a statement. That's the third Thursday of every month, and it's on our website, on the county's website, or you can contact me.
What time is it?
It begins at 2 o'clock typically, but it is located on our website, or you can contact me in my office, and I'll get the information to you. It's a good venue for you to get some issues that it's a little bit less. You're standing at a podium talking to people who are elevated about 3 feet above your head here, which isn't a good way to discuss things. So that's a better venue for discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody that came in for public comment today. I think it's very useful for people to come in, give their perspective on issues that are pending or should be pending before the Board of Commissioners. Regarding the Smiths from Fall Creek, I just want to say how sorry I am this happened. I think that the legal issues and the county and the state and the organization involved, I think that'll take its course, and we're not going to really talk about that today, but I would like to say that there is a point of harmonizing the people that came in to talk about mental illness, and people came in to talk about homeless. And thank you, Pastor, for pointing out that 40% of people that are homeless are mentally ill. And I think that having a work session at the Board of Commissioners level on this topic of the mentally ill, the treatment of the mentally ill, both the people that are in the mental health system as well as people that are outside of that system and are homeless, I think that makes a lot of sense to me, because my focus is on how are we going to use the federal and state and local tax dollars as efficiently as possible. I know that John Addick recently sent a copy of the article on what they're doing in Utah and Salt Lake City in particular, starting with homes and a place for people to be as a starting point toward better care and therapy and possibly even recovery. So to me, just harmonizing that, I would say that would be an opportunity for our staff to present on what they're doing, and in particular, since we received no notice whatsoever about other than reading it in the newspaper about this most recent incident that brought the Smiths in today, we also might want to ask where are we going with other issues in the community that hopefully we won't have to wait until they blow up before we have some action from the board. Thank you.
Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks. So, Sarah, I just wanted to express that when I say it's complicated, that doesn't mean I'm trying to get an excuse for this to drag out. The administrator has already asked staff for a response to all your concerns in your email, and we're working on that. So hopefully we'll get some information to you as soon as possible about that. And I wanted to share too, and maybe the board, some of the members don't remember this, but when we adopted our community health improvement plan about a year and a half ago, one of the points was we wanted to improve mental health services because myself and others that serve, when I was serving on the Public Safety Coordinating Council, it's very frustrating that we didn't have the resources to provide mental health services to folks in our correction system. And so when 3194 came down and we had additional money, we made sure that we were able to plug some of those resources into the mental health services. One of the difficulties that we faced recently is that with the shift in the way health services are provided and mental health services by the governor through the coordinated care organizations, that's complicated how those resources got dispersed and spent in our community. And I want to share with you that Val Hoyle is an incredible champion on this. In fact, she's made it a point. She recognizes that we have an inadequate level of service being provided today, that we have more and more people, just as was explained, 40% of the homeless. I serve on LCOG. Our director at LCOG has shared with me concerns that in our senior and disabled services provision that we provide, we're starting to see more and more people that need mental health services, and we don't have any way to give it to them. So I'm trying to share with you that this board has made it a priority to try to improve that. I'm trying to work with our legislature to come up with more resources. Another situation that I worked with, I'm trying to engage with our mental health committee, advisory committee, to see if they can play a larger role in maybe reviewing some of the instances that take place, offer up ways of dealing with situations when they come around. So in this situation, if we have the authority, which I'm not sure, but if we had some authority in this level, could we have changed the outcome of the way they dealt with this situation instead of essentially removing everybody, finding a place for them outside the community? So when I say complicated, there's a lot of things to consider, and I know our administrator is going to respond to this. I'm hopeful that maybe we'll have an update next meeting, and eventually we may, I've left it up to him, schedule a work session as to how we can try to improve the system. So.
Thank you. And I failed to make note at the start of the meeting, but Commissioner Lycan is excused today. Anyone that follows him on Facebook knows he's down in San Antonio right now. I believe his wife is receiving a national award today. Otherwise, he would like to be here. So with that, we'll move on from commissioners.
Mr. Chair, just one last thing, if I may.
Okay.
once again to the Smiths, and thank you for
Indulging you, okay.
I serve on the AOC and the National Association of Counties Health Steering Committees, and yesterday at the AOC, Association of Oregon Counties, we were talking about bills that we're supporting. One that you may want to take note of is Senate Bill 834, which it establishes a task force on effective mental health treatment. It's sponsored by Dr. Senator Bates from Ashland, and it's it's in committee right now. So you may want to keep an eye on that, and if we have an opportunity to talk, I'll give you more details on how to track that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. So moving on, is there any emergency business today?
No.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine, and we'll take these items as one motion without discussion. They can be viewed on our website if you want to see each individual item. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. It passes 4-0 with Commissioner Lycan excused. And next item is County Council. Were there any announcements for County Council today?
Executive session.
Just I will announce we will have executive session following the meeting this morning. Moving on to County Administration announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of announcements for you today, and I'll invite Mike Finch and Sean Scally up here. Mike is, excuse me. Mike is going to introduce Sean to you, but I wanted to share with you when we hired Mike, went through a national recruitment course to get Mike Finch as our Chief Information Officer. Sometimes you have to look no further than what's right under your nose. So when Mike started in that role several months ago, one of the first conversations we had was Mike's identification of the need for greater security administration of our network application access within our organization, and that's typically what we think about when we talk about IS is the internal, your PC or your mobile device that we use within the organization. We don't really notice it until the email's down or there's some other issue. We also provide, so those are critical services for all of us to operate that we expect in the due course of the business that we have to conduct here in Lane County. But we also provide really critical services for our regional network, our server and data center operations that include Lane County, Lane Council of Governments, eWeb, University of Oregon, cities of Eugene and Springfield. This data center is now celebrating its 50th anniversary. I didn't know we had computers 50 years ago, but we've had a regional data center sharing these services for 50 years, so it's great regional collaboration that's happening there. So one of the things that Mike identified with me early on was the need to have a greater focus on security of our internal network, access to our internal network, as well as security for our regional network. And he very quickly moved to not increase costs, but to find a way within our existing funding structure to create a position that would allow for that to happen. So I'll pass it off to Mike here and allow him to elaborate a little bit and introduce Mr. Scally to you.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, Commissioners. It's my honor to introduce to you Sean Scally. He's Lane County's new Information, or IS and Regional Information Services Security and Audit Manager. Sean holds a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in administration. And Sean spent 21 years in the United States Army as an infantry officer. And he spent the last 8 years in various information technology roles, including leading projects for national security agency data centers around the world. And his experience is going to bring tremendous value to Lane County in his role as the Security and Audit Division's manager. His position and division serves all of Lane County for our application and network security, but also this position provides the security expertise and guidance to all of our regional partners for our network, server, and data center operations, which do serve all of the organizations that Steve talked about. So this has been a great partnership delivering innovation, lower cost, and economies of scale for 50 years. Thanks.
And certainly welcome any questions or comments from commissioners, but we just, again, wanted to introduce to you one of our new great employees. Welcome, Sean, to you.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you and look forward to your contributions here to Lane County. So as promised, we're going to continue to bring you some examples of great folks that we're bringing into the organization, as well as some wonderful employees that have been here for a long time that continue to do great work for us.
Commissioner Farr can't resist.
I can't resist from one inventory commander to another. Boo-ah. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Sean.
I just say welcome, and hopefully you'll have some great ideas for us, so that it makes it easier for me to get on the system. Whether it's through Iron Mail or through the regular system, sometimes I'm challenged with it. So I'm sure it's a good system. I'm just hoping that the users can be more user-friendly.
Commissioner Sorensen.
If he is challenged, I am more challenged. So I agree. I think it's great you're here, and thank you so much for choosing to work here at Lane County, because someone with your background has plenty of choices, so I appreciate you choosing us. And these are great folks to work with, and I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and welcome. And I will say that, with all the news about the various security breaches in corporate security databases, Sony, you name it, I'm happy to have you here. Really happy. So welcome and thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple other updates from last week's meeting. Commissioners had asked, Commissioner Farr in particular, to ensure that as a result of some public comment that we received, that we have the Bureau of Labor and Industry requirements and contact information posted in all county facilities. We've verified through Human Resources Office that we in fact do have updated BOLI information posted in all of our county facilities. So I want to share that with you.
Can I interrupt for a sec,
Yes.
Steve? Would you mind seeing if we can get the volume turned up a little bit on the mics? I'm seeing people struggling to hear us in the audience. How we doing? Is that better?
I think we're competing with the concrete truck outside.
We are. It's a little better than the jackhammer of last week, but
I'm going in the right direction.
we will charge forward. So I will reiterate that for anyone who wasn't able to hear that. There was a question last week about posting of updated BOLI information in our county facilities, and we have verified that we have updated BOLI information posted in all of our county facilities. Another comment that, and I'll invite George Russell and Mike Barnhart, if you'd like, just to come up, and it's at the discretion of the board how much you want to get into this issue, but I'll provide a brief update on the public comments that were made from a couple folks last week related to the printing services RFP that was recently done. I want to share with you that the gentleman, one of the gentlemen who spoke, I actually had an opportunity to meet with shortly after I started last spring. Mike Barnhart and I met with the individual from Instaprint, I believe. Jerry, yes, thank you. In my office shortly thereafter. He was expressing a desire that we do an exclusive contract with Instaprint. I indicated that that's not the way that we do business here in Lane County, that we were planning to do an RFP, and we did conduct that RFP that will have a competitive process and allow for ultimately what we settled on was a non-exclusive contract. We had an exclusive contract previously with another printing service. We did an RFP, a competitive RFP, and we now have a non-exclusive contract which allows for free market competition for those services. And so price and access and quality will drive the services that we consume related to printing. So a couple of the comments that were made last week, one comment was that the bid was only posted for a week, that we weren't willing to extend that date. There was a comment that some individuals didn't like that it's a non-exclusive contract, and there have not been consumption of services from some of those businesses. So I'll share with you the facts are that the original RFP was for 3 weeks. We originally posted the RFP for 3 weeks in August. After week 2, there were some adjustments, some issues related to the pricing matrix that were identified. We then extended the RFP for another 2 weeks, and then at week 4, we issued a new pricing matrix. So I believe it was a total of 5 weeks. Is that right? That the RFP was left open. We have now, I believe, notified all of the organizations of the results of the RFP, and we're planning to do a training session with our department staff to notify them of the new process and how they can access different services. And I think Mike and George will indicate to you here our willingness to work with those printing service providers that spoke last week to invite them to share information with our staff as well. So I'll let Mike and George elaborate on anything that I didn't catch, but just wanted to again reiterate that we went through a competitive process, that an RFP was open and posted publicly for several weeks. There were opportunities for challenges and people to express concerns about the process. Everything was done in accordance with the way that we typically do RFPs. We've moved from an exclusive contract to a non-exclusive contract, which allows for greater competition and openness for those services. So in my opinion, we're actually in a much better position than we had been previously. So with that, I'll offer, if you
Chair Bozovich, Commissioners, I don't know that I have much to add about the process and how we got to where we are, and Mike can sure chime in on that. What I will let you know is that after the meeting last night, last week, I reached out to Doug Koke, invited him to have a meeting and to talk about his concerns and what in particular were some of the issues that he raised. Doug is currently out of town, but I did meet with his daughter Melissa yesterday, and we had a very productive conversation, and she expressed that she understood the process, and she had previously met with Mike and some others, and the concern really was what's happening now and where are we moving now that the contracts have actually been issued. And as Steve indicated, we agreed yesterday that we would be moving ahead with notifying the departments of the bids and the results of the RFP, and establishing a meeting to allow those folks to understand the bids and what services are provided by the individual printers and how they can access those, and in fact encourage them to take advantage of the most cost-effective kinds of services that are being provided by both of the companies that receive the bids.
Yeah, that basically says it all right there. What the big goal is now, because we got the contract signed just recently, is invite each one of them in separately, and we'll have the PC classroom set up, and then have the department contacts who wish to come and they can watch how the vendors operate with regards to their online products. Because everything occurs, of course, through email now. And they both have their own websites, their own portals, where you can do your documents and your printing and your requests and your tracking all through the internet. So I wanted to provide each one an opportunity to show the departments how their systems work, and then also get them in front, get their faces in front of them, so they can get a little more comfortable with the new vendor that we've added to the old vendor as well. Because it's obviously quite easy to continue on with what you've done in the past, but I want to really encourage them to look clearly at both vendors that we have now, compare their prices and their services, and make the best decision for the department. So all in all, I think we're, like Steve said, we're in great shape, and we're better than we were before. So I'm pretty excited about where we're at with this.
And one other thing, Mr. Chair, that I will just add to demonstrate that this is really bringing our printing service contracts in line with other similar services that we consume that have levels of variation in them. So we have several contracts where we purchase fuel, gravel, and other products where availability and location vary between suppliers, and so we allow for, we have non-exclusive contracts for those types of products and services as well. So this brings printing in consistency and alignment with that.
Thank you. Any questions about that? I appreciate you bringing the update on both those items to the board from last week.
One more, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
If you would, I can now report to you that yesterday, March 9th, was the deadline for challenges to the ballot, and if George has anything to add to this, he certainly can. Challenges to the ballot language. We submitted the ballot language for the vehicle registration fee for the May 19th ballot to the clerk's office, and there is a challenge period of, I believe, 7 days, is it 7 business days, from when it is filed. Yesterday at 5 p.m., I believe, was the deadline for challenges. We did not receive any challenges, and there were no challenges filed with the circuit courts for the ballot language. So the ballot language is final, and there will be a ballot number assigned. I just signed the request for that, so we don't have the ballot number yet, but I'll have that shortly and can report that to you if you're interested. So I wanted to let you know that the ballot language for the vehicle registration fee May 19th ballot is final and available for anyone that's interested.
Excellent. Thank you. So moving on, we've got 10 minutes. Ms. Williams, I think we can at least catch your first item, and we might have to break and get back to your other one before 10 o'clock time certain. So item 7B is a report presenting the second quarterly FY 14-15 financial report, and we have Judy Williams.
And while Judy brings that up, Mr. Chair, I'll just share with you, as with the strategic plan quarterly update and the next one that we'll hear after the 10 o'clock, this is quarterly. So the board adopted a strategic plan. We'll do an annual work session where we revise goals and talk in more detail, but we're also going to bring you quarterly updates to let you know where we've completed goals, where there are goals that are on target, and where there are areas that we're monitoring. So we've developed sort of a color-coded system, so it's easy for you to look at those things. We welcome your comments and thoughts, but again, we want to make sure our strategic planning and our financial reviews are a regular part of the business that we conduct, not just something that we develop and then put on a shelf.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Good morning, and I'll be aware of the time certain at 10 o'clock. So, Judy Williams, Strategic Planning and Budget Supervisor, and good morning, Commissioners. And I have the report up on the board as well, so I will just briefly go through this, and then if you have questions or if you want to follow up after the next item, we can do that as well. So you're seeing this report in the exact same format as you saw previously. I believe back in November, Christine Moody brought this to you, and again, as Administrator Moker-Heisky mentioned, we're doing this quarterly. So today I'm reporting on the second quarter, which is October, November, December. Go through, you can follow this on the website as well, and there's an executive summary that summarizes what I will go through, but briefly, we've got information on the CPI with national employment as well, and again, we're looking at these local or national economic indicators as well as local economic indicators, and also looking at budget to actuals, trying to highlight any information that's coming up in the future that we want to give you a heads up on, and just highlight any of those issues. So national employment is looking at 5.6% as of December. Again, we're looking at that second quarter. Rushing through this little. Inflation, the overall cost of living, we've seen a decrease in the last 3 months of the quarter, 0.4% down. Quick adjustment, we added health insurance costs to this national indicator just to try and monitor something that we're trying to keep on top of. So it's CPI for medical care, which medical care has gained slightly in 0.9%, and really what this captures is medicinal drugs, prescription, non-prescription, care, physician services, dental, eye exams, hospital services, so just kind of all of those factors that incorporate that measure. Health insurance is also increasing 0.2%, and then I put this information for Lane County. We did see an increase of 3.6%, just to kind of compare for the entire year, so for 14-15. Going to the local economic indicators, our employment data, it's pretty steady, so we're about 6.7% as of December, again, the end of the quarter. And you're seeing this bubble graph, which you had seen last time as well. And really this just quickly touches on our growth from the recession, so from 2008, how each county in Oregon is looking in terms of gaining jobs. So as of November 2014, Lane County has added back 8,000 jobs from the 7,900 that we lost. So moving forward, real estate, we have an increase of about 4.7% in average for the price of homes, about 5.5% in median sales. Building permit activity, we saw an increase in residential permits with a growth of about 18.9%, while commercial permits decreased about 12.5%. And this again maybe is due to the time of year in the quarter, the October, November, December timeframe. This slide you're seeing as you did last time, but with just the second quarter added to the second column. We are looking good in terms of the budget overall for all funds in the county. We've been receiving, you can see that under revenues, taxes and assessments went from $1 million to $51 million that we received in the second quarter. That's just our property taxes coming in, and you can see that showing throughout. And then reported on each of the other revenue categories. And also looking good and within budget overall for the expenditures portion as well. And briefly, the two funds that we are also reviewing this time, as we did similar last quarter, are the general fund and the road fund. So very briefly, the revenue for the general fund, as you can see that breakdown, taxes and assessment, other revenue, admin charges, we are looking positive and within budget. We've been receiving, the second quarter, we've received 68.11% of our budgeted revenue. And again, that's with that jump in property taxes that we've seen come in. This chart right here in the middle just is comparing the quarter, so the same time frame compared to the last few years and how we're looking. So pretty much the same comparing quarter to quarter. And our expenses for general fund is also positive and within budget, tracking the expenses, and we're expended about 44.78% of our budgeted annual general fund operating expenses. And you can see the chart that's made up from materials and services, but mostly personnel, 72%, and a little on capital expenses. This is also just showing a comparison for the second quarter over a few years. Again, we're at 44% of budget that we've expended so far in that second quarter. And also looking the same as prior years for expenses. Briefly on the road fund, which is the next, I can get this. Okay. For revenues with the road fund, we are also positive and within budget. So we've received 45.04% of our annual road fund operating revenue so far. And there's a slight decrease that was noted, 22,000 from a decrease on the state highway fund allocation dollars. And similarly, there's a look at the second quarter compared to several years, and we are at 45%. And the same with the expenses for the road fund. We are positive and within budget. Expended about 45.04% of our budget annual road fund operating expense. There's a slight increase over the same period last time due to changes in the budget, it looks like. And we also have a comparison of that this second quarter compared several years back, and it's also looking, there's also not only the second quarter looking years back in our expenses, but also what that variance looks like. And so overall for the road fund, it is positive and within budget so far. And
One thing, let me just add that while we say we're positive and within budget, that's with the resources that we're collecting. So what we're reporting to you on is how well we're managing the resources that we have. What we're not looking at, of course, is service levels. And so this is the budget that was adopted this year. We're managing those resources within the budget that we have. Of course, we're projecting next year less revenue in the road fund and the general fund than we have now. So I just want to make that distinction that as you see green, which is good, and it says positive and within budget, it means we're effectively managing the resources that we budgeted. But again, it doesn't consider the reduction in revenues that we continue to face both in the road fund and the general fund.
perfect. And just to end on that, this is the two funds that we looked at this time. I do plan on bringing this back in spring, so about May, and we could talk about additional funds as well. So we've talked about the solid waste fund as an option, as well as the community health centers. And if there's any feedback that you would like further analysis on, we can do that for May, and we'll be seeing you quarterly. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I'm going to ask the board maybe to hold their questions and ask you to step back for a minute, because we do have a 10 a.m. time certain, and it is now 10:02. So we'll interrupt that agenda item real quick, and we're going to jump down to Commissioner's Business 8A. And this is where I wish Commissioner Lycan could be here today, and he wishes he could be here today, because this is in recognition to some work that was done relative to the Springfield Museum by the Lane County Historical Museum. And he wishes he could be here, but after we'd already set this agenda item up, his wife found out she was getting a national award from the banking industry, and had to be in San Antonio to receive that on today. And given the choice between the Weiss National Award and Springfield's, or he chose the spouse, and I think for marital harmony he chose correctly. So he's excused today, but I'd like to bring forward is Chrissy Curran, the Acting Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer. And if you all want to come forward and, kind of share some seats, and if Chrissy wants to maybe use the podium, I believe that there's some recognition here of the Lane County Historical Museum forthcoming relative to some work done in Springfield.
Good morning. Well, Curry Gill of our office at Oregon Heritage Programs has a really great eye for identifying excellence in the heritage field all over the state of Oregon, and it is my privilege to be able to acknowledge that excellence here today, right here in Lane County. I do want to add that this award that we have today first started in Springfield. It was given, the very first award was given to Peace Health in Springfield. So Lane County we have a soft spot in our hearts for Lane County in this award. Partnerships like the ones reflected by Springfield Museum and Lane County Historical Museum are really going to become the norm as resources diminish and constituents change. But we're really not quite there yet, so we're always looking for good models of how that might work. And the willingness of Lane County Historical Museum to step up and offer staff to the Springfield Museum, and the Springfield Museum's willingness to take it, is really that kind of a model. So thank you on behalf of Oregon Heritage. And as in the words of Humphrey Bogart, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. We do have a certificate of appreciation for Lane County Historical Museum.
And do we
I'm not sure.
have some representatives of the museum and all that want to come forward and receive that? And I think we can do the photo op thing and have us, maybe if you want to come forward here and I'll come around the podium if there's anyone that wants to do photos. Looks like we're getting somebody with their phone and all that stuff.
Congratulations. Absolutely.
Can you do that one more time with the board chair present?
Have you all step up here where it's nice background, the rest of the board in the background. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Okay.
Congratulations. That's a great example of cooperation.
Commissioner Bozovich, could I make a short
Just getting ready to ask if there's anybody has any comments.
Commissioners, thank you very much for the opportunity to highlight actually a decision that was very rapidly arrived at by leadership at Lane County Historical Museum. You all may remember there was a January article in late July that said that one of our sister museums was in serious trouble. And basically, three of us put our heads together rather rapidly and said, you know, the right thing to do here is to help. And we sent one of our most capable people over. I think the new executive director at Springfield would be glad to support me in saying that she did a wonderful job of untangling what had become a tangled mess. And again, throughout this decision-making process and arriving at an agreement with Springfield to loan the staff member, Springfield board was on board, our board was on board, and it was just plain the right thing to do. So we did it. So thank you very much for this opportunity to spotlight that.
Thank you. Is there any comments from the board? Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Bob, I just want to thank you for the great work that you do. It's, you're not only shepherding and taking care of the Lane County Museum and keeping it going, but helping the other museums. I'm familiar with Cottage Grove and the work that you've done. You've had folks, Marie Longfellow came and worked for you for a while, learned what she could from you, and then she brought that knowledge down to Cottage Grove and implemented it at the Cottage Grove Museum. The passport program, encouraging you're trying to support visitors to all the different museums. Recent grant program, trying to help out the museums where you can. So I just want to thank you for your leadership and the heart that you've given towards preserving our history and making it available for future generations. It's something that I believe is incredibly important, and unfortunately we don't have, I think, we don't spend enough time acknowledging that and keeping it, probably devoting the resources that need to be devoted to it. So thank you for your work.
Commissioner Sorensen.
I just wanted to thank everyone that's here that worked on this, and especially seeing the great helping relationship that's been developed here between the Lane County Historical Museum and others, not just Springfield, but and others. I think that's really important. I think it shows great cooperation. I think it shows initiative on your part, Mr. Hart, and I think it is showing people that we're using the donated. Most of it is donated. I think all of it's donated. Well, no, there's some tax revenue involved, but a lot of it is donated. And I think it shows good use of tax revenue that comes from our visitor economy money, and I think it shows good use of the donations that people give. The one thing I think can be highlighted here is that the cultural investment in cultural activities beyond music and beyond theater and beyond historical museums, natural history museums, just the whole field of cultural investment is part of the reason why we're seeing this dramatic improvement in the economy here in Eugene. People want to be in places that are interesting, exciting, diverse, and that isn't just cultural resources, but it certainly is a component of livability. And the more that we can do to help you in terms of the public sector contribution to cultural resources, I think it will inure to the benefit of the community and the overall livability of the community. So I want to thank you for working on this, and I'm glad it's working out. I hope we can do more than we are currently doing in support of your mission. Thanks.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich. You know, I would cite my own personal experience, Mr. Hart, with your personally giving me tours of your facility, but extending your facility, your modest facility, I might add, that we operate here in Lane County, extending it to Springfield, to Cottage Grove, and beyond your borders, giving more opportunity to more people to access the really rich history that we have in Lane County. You know, if you look at the Oregon Atlas, Lane County, when it's first charted before the state of Oregon, extended, the dotted lines go all the way to the Continental Divide. So by my estimations, this shadow of the Grand Tetons at one time was in Lane County. It's a pretty remarkable history that we have, and you're doing a really superb job. And I can once again cite my lay experience, but I work very closely with a man who one of his PhDs is in history, and he tells me very authoritatively and without reservation that what you do with your resources here at Lane County is unparalleled anyplace else in the nation. And if we could just give you a little bit more, how much more could you do? If we could give you a little bit more space, a little bit more shelter, a little bit more security from rain and weather, what more could you do? So it is, please know that it's high on my personal agenda. I know each one of us here feels the same way, that preserving the history of Lane County through the Springfield Museum, through the Cottage Museum in Cottage Grove, and through the other things that you do is important, not to us, not just to us, but to posterity. And rest assured that while I can give you my personal congratulations, coming from a really high authority, somebody who really knows history, says that you're the best that there is. Take that as a compliment indeed.
Thank you. And I'd like to just take a moment to thank you for your work and appreciate that the state has recognized your work. And you know, I just got finished reading about a week ago or so Monuments Men. You know, one of the first times I think I've seen a movie before I read the book. I usually don't do it in that order, but the book was far superior as usual. But it just brings out that need for us to preserve our culture and how important it is to humanity to document that and preserve that. But it also, you know, here's this small group of folks that were doing that during World War II, and it was a coalition of the British and the Americans lending their expertise, these museum curators and art preservers and architects and sculptors that were part of this force to preserve these cultural monuments. And even the French were involved, and there were women involved in that whole thing. So it was this joint effort to preserve, and I look at this as Lane County's Monuments Men, and how you guys worked together and preserved that history that was available there in Springfield, not thinking about whether you were British or American or whatever. It was all about just preserving that cultural heritage, and I really think you're doing a great job, and I'm really happy that the state has recognized the great job that you're doing, so thank you.
Now, Commissioners, thank you all for your continuing support of our mission. We take that, as you can tell, very seriously. But it's not due to any single individual. It's a group activity. Executive directors look good because of the support of their board and having a wonderful staff. So thank you again for the part you played in this and giving us the support that makes us able to do what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now if I can get Ms. Williams to step back up, we'll jump back into our agenda where we left off. And I think we're kind of the point where if we have questions from the commissioners about the second quarter financial report.
Or not.
Hearing somewhat crickets. But I will note that it's always interesting to look on the revenue side, and you see some categories way out of that, and it's just a matter of when we get payments, and as I start trying to explain our budget to citizens and they look at our CAFR sometimes and see some of our ending fund balances are rather large in some departments. When you look at our actual, for our revenues halfway through the year, you see that our taxes are way above 50% for halfway through the year, but because we've gone through the November property tax collections. But you look at our federal revenue and it's down less than 20% because we haven't gotten the federal payments yet for those particular pieces of revenue, and those ending fund balances are all about balancing out that when we get revenue. Meanwhile, if you look at our expenses, they're almost dead on 50% with everything. So we have to continue paying those daily expenses in light of the revenue going up and down and up and down, and that's why we have ending fund reserves in a lot of our funds, and why if you look at our comprehensive financial report, it may look like we're holding a lot of money, but it's not necessarily that we have that much money. That's about cash flow quite often, depending on which fund it is. So I appreciate getting the report, but it's always interesting to note those little things. Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks. That gave me enough time to get my question back. It's hard to go from one subject to another if you don't take notes. Judy, I was just wondering, you showed us that graph again of the little bubbles and where Lane County's about 45% recovery of the jobs lost in 2008. How often do they update those numbers?
I've been looking for some updates since that November 2004 date. I know that is the latest that we had for you back in January when we met as a leadership team. So I can certainly contact Brian Rooney, our local economic advisor, and get an idea from him. But I haven't seen anything recent as of the November 2014 time.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I could, in my mind, this past year we've done quite a bit, I feel, with the economic improvement and with the investments that we made in different businesses and additional job creation. I was just wondering if there was a way to reflect how those correspond to the overall big picture of jobs in Lane County. So if they do it quarterly, it'd be nice to have a reference to what it was last quarter, what it is this quarter, and maybe tie in, if there's a way to tie in our effort in economic improvement to job creation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the financial report? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item C, which is the first quarterly update on the Lane County Strategic Plan. And Ms. Williams, it's your item also.
Yes.
Mr. Mokreisky wants to lead off on.
I think I already made my comments. I could say them again, but...
Okay, so I'll get the PowerPoint up here. And again, this information is on our website, both the lanecounty.org and the agenda item. And the quarterly report. So this is the first time that the strategic plan update is coming to you, unlike the financial report. So this may look a little new to you, but we'll plan on doing this again quarterly and let you know of any updates and progress, and you can update some of the tactics and I have the entire report on the website, which I will show you, and this just a PowerPoint that kind of walks through some of the highlights. So with that, the timeline. So June through November, we were working on our strategic plan with the adoption that happened in November. So far, in terms of communicating those plans, the county administrator has done several presentations, in addition to lunch group meetings with staff throughout the county to kind of go through that one-pager, talk about our priorities and what some of the next steps are. This is the first quarterly update, and we will continue with the communications plan of the strategic plan, which will incorporate more pamphlets going out and continuing those discussions, and then more quarterly reports in addition to the annual report that's scheduled for November of 2016. 2015, yes, that was a typo. We'll be back this November. So briefly, the mission, vision, values. Values are the same as they had been for the prior strategic plan. Our mission, vision is up there as well. Lane County is recognized as the best county to live, work, and play. And our motto, Lane County Proud. The 3 strategic priorities, so safe, healthy county, vibrant communities, and infrastructure. And among those priorities, we have several objectives, and those are listed below, and I won't walk through those, but basically this PowerPoint's going to really summarize the tactics that are under each of those objectives and listing out many of the tactics that we've completed, that we're on task with, that we're monitoring. And so this is the overall picture of what these priorities are that we're addressing. So we've got the Venn diagram, which you'll see throughout. It's kind of the symbol of this strategic plan with the 3 priorities, and then the arrows that kind of symbolize the financial stability that's an important factor in our county and the plan. Briefly, the Lane County website has been updated as we get more information, so I just wanted to point out some of the resources. The first arrow is just a quick one-pager if you're ever interested, or if you're going to presentations and you want a quick summary of that plan, as well as the quarterly report. And then each of those headings, the priority 1, priority 2, and 3, are some PDFs that have all of the tactics under each of those items. So there's several pages of information. I didn't want to put it all up there, but you can certainly get a quick handout for the future. So stepping right into the first priority, a safe and healthy county. So I've grouped together all of the tactics that we've completed. So you'll see the green box on the right hand corner, and that's a couple of the tasks, and then in terms of results, so communicate results of the jail levy audit to the residents. We've done that. There's been a lot of discussion with the public safety plan and securing additional funding. There was recently about $1 million almost for 3 years that was awarded to Lane County for addressing the prison intakes and using evidence-based practices. Those tactics that we're on target for, and again on target, and this kind of walks through, it walks through what the definitions of those are in the quarterly plan, but those are, those that are on target, or, there's a lot of activity happening with these. So I won't read through all of these, but just wanted to highlight one. As you can see, the Public Market and Food Hub analysis report, a success, and we're on target with. That was a great cooperation with our economic development group here at Lane County, Public Health, City of Eugene, and the U of O to really come together and work towards this. And that was part of the CHIP plan, which is also part of our strategic plan. Some more tactics that are on target, and this is kind of more related to the partnerships. As we've heard this morning, there's a lot happening with, homelessness and trying to have further connections. So Operation 365, an example of the rest stop opening, coordinated partnerships with PSCC and some of our CCOs. those that we're monitoring still, and lots of work continuing, but we're just monitoring. Again, I won't walk through all of these, but there's a lot of work happening. The first, as we know, Securable Schools, 113th Congress, we didn't get a payment, but 114th, there's hope that we'll have possibly a 2 or 3 year reauthorization, and you may hear more about that from Alex Kyler later today. We also mentioned this morning, some of the House bills and Senate bills in regards to housing and homelessness and trying to address some of the mental health reinvestment programs. Our next strategic priority, which is vibrant communities, for those that are completed. So we have negotiated a redevelopment agreement for the 6 and Oak properties. So next steps are in the works. Partnering with the workforce development, so that's completed, and it's led to $150,000 this year that's budgeted, and next year as well, to support training for local businesses and nonprofits. Many tactics as well under vibrant communities that are on target, so lots of work happening out there, and briefly on a couple of these. The first one, adopt and implement an economic development plan with SWED, which is SWEDCO, the Southwest region. There's been a lot of progress with that, and we're working on securing or looking for the executive director for that. Economic development in general is really tied in their work plan to incorporate this strategic plan. It's kind of gearing towards infrastructure based. So you'll see how that addresses many of these tactics here. Land management, there's been several, midway through, we see analyzed fee structure. There's been a lot of progress with an RFP that's been taken place so far, and they're due for a report back to the Board of Commissioners in June. And finally, on that slide, implement best practices. So we're going to also be bringing this up again quarterly, and as well as the annual, to try and keep on top of this and keep reporting back. Another slide full of tactics that we are on target with, just due to the nature of how many we have, and we're hard at work. So here's some more tactics that, again, on target. Continue to partner with Travel Lane County. There's a session, I believe, in April that's coming back to the board to have an update with Travel Lane County. The final bullet point there, it's promote greater understanding and acceptance for all people based on the unique backgrounds, culture, and diversity of our employees. There's been a lot of work with the E2 Committee, Equity and Access Committee, that's working on summits to have their own mission, vision, values, and having those communicated throughout the county as well. And just one that we're monitoring on vibrant communities is, because it's due back to the board around June, is trying to have those discussions around what might be best for Lane County in terms of a formal structure. It looks at community organizations and talking with leaders around the community in terms of a human rights work group or committee, or what that formal structure would look like. And finally, our infrastructure priority. We have a couple of completed tactics, and those are around the vehicle registration fee that were tactics that we incorporated into our plan. And briefly, it's just we did a public survey on the vehicle registration fee and implemented board direction. But there's still more work happening. So the next tactics you'll see is on target, and that would be some of the other, continuing the communication, working with the 12 cities. Some of the facilities projects and tactics that were identified as part of the plan have been moving forward, so they're on target. Complete a countywide facilities condition assessment. We've completed a HVAC assessment, and I believe the roof systems is the next project. And with some of that, we'll be able to finalize some of the other tactics as well as those keep moving forward. Finally, the continue to refine and follow a space allocation plan. We've got the assessment taxation department that's reallocating space and moving forward with that very soon. And a couple of those that we're still monitoring for infrastructure addressed also some of the facilities items as well as the parks, and a couple of tactics, so create partnerships that enhance existing park infrastructure, and then coming up with a plan that addresses the park maintenance backlog. So we will continue to monitor those. And then just to wrap up the presentation, I have a couple of next steps, which would, again, like we've been talking, bringing this back quarterly with the financial quarterly updates. So we're looking at mid-May, which is just a couple months away. We're a little behind this quarter, so we're hoping before the budget discussions, budget presentations, to come back and really, again, look at how we're doing and continue with one other quarterly update and then an annual update in November. Again, continue to communicate this plan and then focus on department strategic plans. There are several in the county that are established, some that are ongoing, some that are, about that time frame to renew and redo their strategic plan. So just working with departments on incorporating theirs into the larger countywide strategic plan. That's the presentation, if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Stewart.
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to thank you, Judy, for the update. I have had the opportunity the last month or so to go speak to 2-3 different organizations, and it was really nice to be able to go to the website, print up the one-pager. I was able to hand out one-pagers to a good majority of the folks that were present and really used it as a basis of, what are we doing here? And it's so nice to be able to have a document that you can refer to, because, every meeting we're dealing with all different kinds of topics, and so being able to stay focused on how we're, our goals and missions and our strategic priorities and what we're doing, being able to update people and speak to what we're doing is very helpful. And I got a lot of positive feedback from folks about, wow, great work you're doing, and I was able to update how it's a goal of our administrator to be able to build partnerships and better communication and how to outreach the people, and showing them the engage options that you can engage in answering questions, or his availability to go out and speak to whoever chooses to invite him, and so I appreciate this because it's really helpful for me, and I believe it's making me better at communicating what we're doing, and I appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Farr, then Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You allocated 15 minutes on the agenda for this, so I'm not going to go into details of all the wonderful things that are enclosed in this 14-page document that I'm looking at right here. I'd like to say to those who are watching on either live or future broadcast of this, that if you go to today's agenda, click on View Items, you get the entire 14-page document, which goes into great detail, much more than you were able to in a short presentation today. And good job making it as concise as you did. I won't go into details on the very many items that are contained on this. Just to you, Mr. Mokrahysky, before you took the job, you and I sat down and talked about strategic plans, and you delineated to me your idea of a strategic plan, and I'm looking at basically what you and I talked about. It seems decades ago. It just wasn't that long ago that we talked about a strategic plan that had goals, that had individual strategies, and that had a fluid set of tactics that addressed the very specific work item work agenda items that you're addressing here. I'll go into one in particular. It's Objective 1.2, improve the health of our communities. And Judy, Ms. Williams, toward the end of her presentation, said working with the departments on their strategic plans. As Commissioner Stewart mentioned earlier in today's meeting, we have a community health improvement plan that we adopted a year and a half ago, and a large part of Objective 1.2 is working with the CHIP and making certain that anything good that was in place we're continuing that with the board's work plan, with the board strategic plan. And I want to compliment you on the fact that you did take that initial discussion that you outlined to me. You made a working document here. I've worked in private industry, I've worked with non-profits, and I've worked with excellent strategic plans in both. This really is one of the finest strategic plans that I've ever seen in terms of the way it addresses the three broad areas, breaks it down into strategies, and then breaks it down right to the very level where any one person working in this organization can look at what they're doing at any one moment in time and link it to the strategic plan and make certain that we are moving forward. And it's adaptive and it does a very good job of taking into account the very fluid nature of the work that we do and the very dynamic nature of our resources. And once again, I'm not going to go into detail of all of the many things that you've contained in this plan. I hope people do. I hope each one of us takes a great deal of time to study what's happened in this quarterly report, because not only is the plan outstanding, the report is outstanding. Thank you very much, and congratulations on a job very, very well done.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to thank you for your work on this. The one point of improvement, and maybe it's already improved and I just don't know it, that it's been improved, is I think that every day I'm in this meeting, which is a substantial portion of my adult life, I would say that I hear the word plan, because the state requires plans, the federal government requires plans, some of our nonprofit partners in dealing with their funders, those funders require plans. So there's plans all over the place. And I can think of a few where we have a Public Safety Coordinating Council that has a plan, or many of our departments are submitting plans to the state, because the state requires that their money be subject to a plan. And I'm wondering, in the course of the work on the strategic plan, our plan, the big plan, whether we could have references to all these other plans, so that there's a way for us to keep track of how many plans there are, and more significantly, because we're trying to draw public attention to our strategic plan, the more we can get the public aware of how many other plans there are. I think that would be a really big improvement to the number of plans that we have. And then, of course, I know in the land use arena, we have plan revisions. We have revisions to plans. And so I think that would help when we use a big word like the strategic plan, that we're making reference to all these other plans. And I know that oftentimes the requirements of these plans involve public involvement. They have to involve the public in making or revising the plan. So there again, if we make reference to all the other plans, and part of the reason I support this idea of this Lane County strategic plan is that there are some things we don't have authority over. We don't have authority over what acts of Congress there are, or what authority over executive orders issued by the presidents, or executive orders issued by the governor, or statutes passed by the legislature. Now, it's part of our plan to make changes in these things, and in the case of the Secure Rural Schools, ask for that law to be put back in place. But in the meantime, we've got a lot of plans out there where we're required, or I should say, people are allowed to comment on plans. And rather than it'd be too early for them to comment on a plan or too late to comment on a plan, if we have references to these plans on on our strategic plan and our website, we have a better chance of actually involving people in all of these plans. So thanks a lot. And do you have any estimate of how many plans there are in Lane County government?
I have the exact number.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, you know, because I just listed off, we heard about the public health improvement plan. I talked about the public safety plan. Can you think of others?
Commissioner Sorensen, there are many plans, as you mentioned. We did go through kind of in the early brainstorming sessions of this strategic plan. We listed many, you know, like the CHIP that we have in this plan, public safety plan, the PSDC plan. There are numerous, and I have no idea off the top of my head how many, but it's a good idea to kind of make notes of those for the future so that people can follow along.
Mr. Chair, if it's all right, I'd just add, we're going to make it more difficult for you, not easier, because one of the things that we're doing is working with departments to develop department strategic plans. We mentioned it. Of course, in some cases, in Health and Human Services, we have the CHIP. In other departments, there are old versions of strategic plans. They need to be updated. In other departments, there's nothing. Our goal is to, as part of the budget process, be able to share with the Budget Committee, with the Board and Budget Committee, the one-pagers. So what we want to do is sort of standardize how the department's strategic plans, at least as you see them and the public sees them, are standardized and consistent and sort of easy to follow and review. So we're all working off of consistent documents. Our goal is to have those completed and presented as part of the budget process, so that as we're presenting department budgets, that we're also talking about the strategic objectives and goals that we have, because really the strategic plan should be tightly linked to the budget. Because in order to accomplish our strategic plan, we have to have resources that are invested in the right place that allow us to do that. So we're trying to get closer and closer to that place where we're planning and we're investing, and we're planning and investing in the same things. And then we're really talking about, when we talk about the strategic plan, we're talking about the budget. When we talk about the budget, we're talking about the strategic plan. So that is going to start as part of the budget process. So I just add that while we have a number of different programs and initiatives like the PSCC and a public safety plan, we also are going to develop department strategic plans that feed into the countywide strategic plan. We will do our best to create strategic alignment and reduce duplication and make it as consistent as possible. And we certainly can report to you, I think, at that time about the number of plans that we have, and we can do some things to try to link on our website on the strategic planning page to the other plans that are out there that exist.
Thank you. I just was, my head was spinning trying to think of plans, from the rural comprehensive plan to the planning commission's work plan to, you name it. We've got plans all over the place, and many of them do involve have public involvement in developing them. Really appreciate the update and the tracking that goes along with it. I think it's a great thing that we're doing there. Any other questions for staff or Commissioner Farr?
If I may, just a word of caution from a countryman of mine that's been restated in a number of ways. Best laid schemes of mice and men gang after glay, which has been restated by John Steinbeck, among others. The best laid plans of mice and men go off astray. Well, you've built in the means to make certain that our plans, as they do go astray or aglay, that you, with the very fluid and dynamic tactics that are involved, anything that is, you're able to respond to anything as it happens. As recently we responded to the meningitis emergency at the University of Oregon. I think that's an example of the fact that our strategic plan is in place, is necessary, and is fluid enough to take on the many challenges that we're going to be facing on a daily basis. So well done once again.
And what's interesting is I was in Salem most of the day yesterday, and I got a chance to testify to a committee on House Bill 3100, which is a redesign of basically the state's public health system. Speaking of the meningitis outbreak, and Dr. Ludke was up there also and testified. But one of the sections requires additional plans and assessments. And the question was, does our community health improvement plan meet that requirement, or is this a whole other set of documents the state's going to start requiring us to do? And that was part of my testimony, was to try and clarify, are they asking for two, because the way they phrase it, they actually asked for two sets of plans in the legislation, separate from each other. One's a plan and one's the assessment, and we actually did our assessment and wrote up our plan and included the assessment as part of it, and whether it would be a duplication. So it's always kind of interesting as we go back and forth between what the state starts requiring us to do in the way of planning and balancing that. So great job. I really appreciate the update.
And one last thing, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Kyler and I were at the Springfield Eugene Lane Breakfast on Friday, and we had a presentation from the Lane Livability, which is a HUD-funded cooperative. And Mr. Kyler just reminded me that initiative has cataloged all of the community plans that have been developed. So again, we'll look at that, and then we'll square that with our plans. We don't want to have duplication. We don't want to plan and just keep planning. Plans are valuable only to the extent to which you use them to act. And so I think, as Commissioner Stewart said, our real goal here is to create focus and alignment of resources and deliver results. And so we're trying to report to you quarterly on the delivery of results, what we're actually doing. So we'll do our best again to streamline and pull that information together so it's easily accessible, and we'll continue to report to you on the actions and the delivery results that we're pursuing.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item 8B, because we already took care of A, and it's an update from the Legislative Committee meeting from February 27th, and also current legislation and all that from our Intergovernmental Relations Manager, Alex Kyler. And
thank you, Alex.
Mr. Kyler.
Thank you. Chair Bozovich, members of the committee, I'm Alex Kyler, Lane County's Intergovernmental Relations Manager. So before you do have a board packet that has the report back. What I handed out was really a fifth item that I understand was a board assignment, I believe, from last week regarding sort of a status report on legislation related to electronic cigarettes. So if it's okay with you, I'll just put that as the last part of my report back today. Okay. I think I'd refer you to the second page of the packet where the paragraph E speaks to the analysis that we've provided, and there are, again, 5 items, and Mr. Chair, if okay with you, I'll just go through them in that order under E.
Sounds great.
Okay. So the first thing is a progress of specific proposed legislation for the 2015 session, and that refers to attachment A. There's a number of measures that we looked at during the legislative committee meeting, and they are on attachment A. You'll see the bill number, brief description of the bill, and the recommendation in the third column. I did want to point out Senate Bill 414 about halfway down the page there, and for whatever reason, we did not take a position on that measure at the meeting. I think Sarah Chinsky and I did discuss this morning. We hadn't gotten a recommendation back from staff. This one, you might recognize this bill. We've dealt with this one in a couple of different sessions about doing an analysis before a procurement for services can be determined or finalized. There was several folks who were meeting on that bill this morning in Salem, and my understanding is there may be an amendment in the work, but I think probably the best thing to do is just make sure that comes back around to the board for a position from the next legislative committee.
I believe AOC Governance Committee looked at that yesterday, and I do not remember the position they took, but you may want to check in with Rob Bove also.
Yeah. I think in the past we've not been entirely supportive of that concept. My understanding is that the League of Oregon Cities may have a potential amendment that might make it a workable measure, but I haven't examined that yet. So I'm not sure if there's particular questions that the board has regarding these measures that we did take a position on. I think that's probably the best thing to do at this point, is just to see if I can respond to particular questions that you may have.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Regarding HB 2546A, the bill that defines an inhalant delivery system.
Yeah.
Is that more commonly known as e-cigarettes, or what is that?
Chairman Bozovich, Commissioner Sorensen, correct. The state defined, used that definition a little bit differently than we did in our ordinance.
Okay. Does the bill preempt our ordinance?
Chairman Bozovich, Commissioner Sorensen, it only in one section it does. If you look at the piece that I handed out there at the very bottom, there is a preemption against vending machines and sale of tobacco products through vending or mobile displays may not be. That's an area of commerce that may not be regulated by local government. So that preemption existed, and House Bill 2546 would amend that so that inhalant delivery systems are also not available for vending. So there is a little bit of work that would be needed to be done in that regard, because we did address that in our ordinance. Now, I do want to note that House Bill 2546 has only been through the House thus far.
Yeah.
So still.
But it seems like there wasn't much opposition.
No.
Yeah, it seems like it just sailed through.
Yeah.
Do you know if that was the plan of the tobacco industry, to not fight it in the House?
Chairman Bozovich and Commissioner Sorensen, I'm not sure. I do know that, the vaping industry was actually seeking at least parts of that bill.
Oh, okay.
So they never liked the idea that they would be perceived as being allowed to sell those kinds of products to minors, for example.
Okay.
So I think they were very supportive of those kinds of languages. Now, there were some changes in that measure to the Oregon Indoor Clean Air Act that I think there were a number of folks probably didn't like. There was a closure of a loophole, for example, that was taken care of within the bill. And so that may be, but it may have caused some ire amongst folks who are opposed to it, but frankly, I wasn't really involved with those conversations necessarily.
Yeah. So maybe you have this on here. When did they do that? When did the House pass it?
Chairman Bozovich, Commissioner Sorensen, I think I don't think we have the date on there exactly, but I want to say it was last week that passed. So because it was only recently assigned to the Senate Committee on Healthcare, so I'm pretty sure it was just last week that it was passed. Yeah.
Okay, and then what's this going on with the health care, or it's not health care, it's more like paid sick leave legislation? Is that moving? Is it stalled? Is it preempting what the city of Eugene did? What's going on with the paid sick leave legislation.
Commissioner Bozovich and Chairman Bozovich and Commissioner Sorensen, the paid sick leave bill has had a public hearing. In fact, it had quite a public hearing. It was an evening hearing. They held a hearing in both the House and the Senate. Had committees meet for a public hearing and to hear feedback on the measures. My understanding is that there is, as a result of those hearings, there is some additional work going on the measure. The preemption question is a good one. We don't know yet. I think the language in the bill right now essentially says that any local measure that gets passed is in addition to what the legislative proposal is. So essentially it sets a floor, and then local governments could add on to it. That will...
Cities or local governments?
Local governments. So that will prove to be problematic. And my understanding is there is some work being done to amend that particular section. Now, whether they will go as far as repealing the existing ordinances is a question I don't have the answer to. I've heard various things, that they will either use the Portland or the Eugene model. It may be that they do something where certain cities of a certain size get to keep their ordinances, so that might be another way that we see that going. But again, that one is sort of gone underground in Salem, and I'm not party to those negotiations.
The sick leave?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that, do you think that's going to move in the session?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I just want to make note that we kind of jumped out of order here. I think you were trying to ask for questions on attachment A, and we jumped into the e-cigarettes and other issues. So if we want to kind of keep you back on your schedule where there's some questions on attachment A. Commissioner Farr?
Actually, mine is regarding the attachment A, but and just very briefly, and I can cover more of this later, there are some bills that I know that we're keeping track of that aren't actually on attachment A. Some that have been introduced or wording has been changed a little bit later on, and some that AOC is keeping track of that aren't on attachment A. Right. So just at some point I'll make mention of a couple of those.
Well, for example, if I may, Chairman...
House Bill 3420, for instance.
Excuse me?
House Bill 3420, for instance, which is the housing. It's Hoyle, Gelser, and Olson.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we don't need to talk about that at this point.
Well, I guess I would say, Commissioner Farr, that there are a number of bills that we took as priority positions on that you said to me, go get a bill written. Let's make sure that gets into play in Salem. And for all those priorities that we've already established, that's been the primary focus of my work thus far in Salem, is to actually move those bills to become introduced. That's why you actually see that the bill actually has a number now that you referred to. We had a hearing. In fact, Senate Bill 26 was passed to the floor of the Senate yesterday morning. That's the bill that would remove the sunset from the county's authority to transfer certain road funds to purposes of patrolling county roads. So all those priorities that you've given me are actually resulted in either a measure or some kind of testimony. There were a number of things that were just money issues, and we've managed to move those as well. So I didn't give you an update for those priority bills because they're just work that's ongoing at any rate, but I can do that if you'd like.
No, that's not necessary at this point, Mr. Keller. I just want to point out that I recognize the tremendous amount of work that you do during the legislative session, and I don't know how you do it as one single person, Mr. Keller. It's pretty remarkable.
Well, I do have a lot of help.
Any other questions on attachment A? Do you want to move on with your report?
Yeah, I guess these are recommendations to the board, and I think we had said that it would be well to have a motion on attachment A? Yeah, so do you want to do that, all the motions at
Yeah,
once?
I guess we can, you want a separate motion on attachment? I think we can do a separate motion if we want. Is there a motion to approve the positions as stated in attachment A?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the positions of the Legislative Committee as expressed in attachment A on the various bills. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Likens excused.
Okay. The next item is a report back on the status of any proposed legislation at the state relating to the National Defense Authorization Act. That was a piece of work that was directed to the Legislative Committee by the board at a previous meeting. So staff did look for any state legislation. In fact, I looked 10 minutes ago to see if there's anything new, and I've yet to see a bill that has to do with indefinite detention, National Defense Authorization Act, nullification. I'm not seeing anything that I would think would be that language in a bill, at least looking at some of the other states that have introduced this kind of legislation. So the note that we discussed that in Legislative Committee. We also talked a little bit about the calendar in terms of Salem. So on the 25th of February, that was a deadline for bills to be introduced in Salem, sort of on the unlimited category. So where, they were sort of all comers can introduce a bill up to February 25th. After February 25th, now each member has a five bill limit, and so they term these their priority bills. Some members hold their priority bills pretty close to the vest. We'll see those will sort of start to come forward as they get written and introduced. But thus far, I'm not seeing anything related to National Defense Authorization Act.
Thank you. Any questions about that? I think Commissioner Sorensen, you specifically had asked about that item, so I think that clarifies that. Thank you.
Okay. The third item was just a quick update, really, from the United Front trip in Washington, D.C. So one of the priorities we took to Washington, D.C. was the issue of gaining a teaching hospital to serve Lane County. This is commonly referred to as a residency program. In the legislative language, it's referred to as GME, which is Graduate Medical Education, and there is some federal legislation around GME. We were able to have several meetings with some well-positioned folks in Congress, Greg Walden's office and Kurt Schrader's office, both of whom sit on House Healthcare. Excuse me, not House Healthcare, House Energy and Commerce, which has a healthcare subcommittee, and Kurt Schrader in particular sits on that subcommittee. We also had good conversations with Congressman DeFazio's office. He's actually working on a piece of legislation that is a little bit of a refinement of graduate medical education. So typically prior to the trip, when we were thinking about GME, it involved how can we assist local hospitals in actually implementing a teaching hospital model where they would have residents who then would be available in the community for the positions. And that's sort of part of the problem that we've had in terms of recruiting primary care doctors in the community. Congressman DeFazio's office actually got a twist on that, where he's working on a bill that would allow for a healthcare clinic to be a teaching clinic. And so we're monitoring that piece of legislation. It has not been introduced yet, but it is an interesting concept where the potential could exist in the future where instead of relying on a hospital to have a residency program, there may be a way for the county to be involved with having its own residency program managed through our network of FQHC facilities. So that's what we're monitoring. The letter under the third item was just a sort of a formal way of saying thank you to Representative Schrader for making some staff available for us to have a conversation with him, and gave a written update of sort of what we discussed in the meeting. And there may be a little bit more work that needs to be done to the letter to reflect what we're learning about the potential for a clinic to be a teaching clinic. And in fact, there is some work being done in Salem as well to assist in this. The legislature is aware that this is not a particularly unique problem to Lane County. It's actually statewide, and indeed Western United States. We just are not have enough residency slots for specifically primary care physicians. So I included the draft as a letter. I think there's, like I said, there's a little bit more work to be done here in this letter. The draft says it's from the Lane County Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Bozovich, I think there's a couple options here. The board could suggest that we come back when the letter is final. I think the other direction is that the administrator or myself could send the letter, or one of you as members could send the letter if we sort of feel like there's a timing issue. I'm not particularly recommending or acknowledging there is a timing issue, other than the fact that we were in DC now three weeks ago. So at some point in time, I'd like it to not be too stale, but any commissioners?
Sure. Mr. Kyler, is it possible to have that formalized draft back to the board next week?
Yes.
And possibly put it on the consent calendar? I think in general I support the letter with the way it's wrote. Additionally, and then if the board can choose to pull it off the consent calendar if we have additional changes or concerns with it.
I think that's a good plan. Any objections to that?
Okay. So the final piece that we had on was the problem gambling principle. If you do refer back to attachment A, you'll see there's a couple of different bills that have to do with social games and gambling issues. You'll recall from the last time I was in front of you, we finalized what is now, you'll see in attachment B, which was these legislative principles. And unfortunately, we should have had one under Health and Human Services for the issue of problem gambling, and it was just an oversight. We missed having that when we came forward with you to get this finalized, and so the Legislative Committee recommends that we add the language found on page 3 of attachment B, which is support strategies to reduce the negative effects of problem/disorder gambling in Lane County. And I think, Mr. Chair, a motion to just amend that as written would be appreciated.
So do I have a motion to amend our legislative principles and priorities to add that line concerning problem gambling?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Lycan excused.
Okay, so finally, I think just the fifth item was the one that the board had asked come back, is just a little bit of an analysis between the e-cigarette legislation that's on the move in Salem and what the board previously adopted as an ordinance in Lane County. And so I've got a sort of a one-pager on that. And then on the back side of your page, you'll see there's a list of other bills that are also still pending in Salem. We do believe Senate Bill 340 is the companion measure to HB 2546. Oftentimes, you'll see identical measures introduced in both the House and the Senate. So I don't think you need to pay particular attention to SB 340.
I'm sorry, the laptop ought to be shut down. It's getting ready to run out of battery.
Okay.
Looks like it's plugged in.
I thought that was the Eugene Symphony.
We sort of had a back and forth on this. I did find the one area where our ordinance and HB 2546 are in conflict. There may be others. It's the House Bill 2546 does establish that there will be a statewide inspection program and enforcement program for retailers. So they also can utilize OLCC inspectors for that if 2546 passes. So that's exactly what our ordinance suggested as well, was that we would charge a fee to support an enforcement program and an inspection program in the unincorporated parts of Lane County. So essentially there is a bit of an overlap between the two inspection programs. I don't know to the extent that matters or will be an overlap, but it is something to bring to your attention that the House bill does somewhat a similar concept to what the ordinance does as well in that particular regard.
Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks. Thanks, Alex, for the update, because I've asked that our ordinance come back before the board, I think, first part of May. In fact, myself and Commissioner Bozovich and Alicia Hayes will be attending a Small Grocers Association meeting Thursday to hear their concerns. But it might be that one of our reasons for adopting the licensing component of tobacco sales is because there was very little, if no, oversight in the sales of that product in our county. If this bill is now suddenly going to incorporate and it'd be a duplication, I guess we'd have to ask the question amongst our board members as to whether or not we need to continue to have that duplication. So I think it's good to have all this information as this comes back, and I assume that one of some level this bill is going to get passed into a law. So thanks for keeping us up to date.
And Chairman Bozovich and Commissioner Stewart, we may want to also keep our eyes then on Senate Bill 417, which is on the back side of that page. That's the one where I've been referring to it as the licensure bill. So this one actually would establish an imposition of fees. So where 2546 does not have the fee imposition, this one would, and so one would expect, I think, if there was a fee structure to support the enforcement, that if 417 gains legs and moves, probably more robust ability by the state to monitor retail sales.
Thanks.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carley, you when we were talking about our inhalant ordinance, you expressed caution to us regarding the fact that the state was going to be moving forward with something, and even though we couldn't determine exactly what it was, and we still can't really determine exactly what it is the state's going to move forward with, but I really appreciate your staying on top of that and keeping us apprised through the May meeting that we're going to have. And I'm also anxious to hear what Commissioner Stewart finds out at his Thursday meeting after talking to the small grocers, because I've made a note. One of the reasons that I personally wanted to move quickly on it, which I did, and we acted on it last year, was because of the urgency of making certain that kids can't buy it. And I think as a result of that, we're seeing from some of the stores that I've stepped into, they've actually taken some of that stuff away from the front of the counter. It's actually been moved to the back. I asked a clerk at a small grocery store just this last weekend, do you guys sell e-cigarettes? She said, well, we do, but we kind of keep it down here now. So I think part of the intent of the chip was to reduce juvenile exposure to the potential of becoming addicted to nicotine and to the other the other ills that follow with cigarette smoking and inhalants. And I think we've been successful in that. And monitoring what the state does and making certain that we're not out of line with the state, or that whatever inspections that we do are coordinated with whatever inspections the state does. I think that's something that is a part of, Mr. Morker-Heiske's attention scan and or attention span, and we'll keep track of that. And appreciate your keeping us updated on that.
So I'd appreciate the report back, Alex. The one thing I will, if the 2546 may add in an inspection program for e-cigarettes, but one of the reasons we adopted the licensing locally was to generate a revenue stream to do our own inspections, because the current level of state inspections is woefully inadequate. So if it doesn't have funding to go along with that, or some mechanism to fund, that's part of my concern. The secondary thing is I believe the state's penalties are mostly for the clerk, not the establishment that holds the license, but I'm not positive about that. But it's one of those things where we need to look at that, and on the other hand, we set ours up where it's all the establishment, and the clerk doesn't suffer any consequences for sales to minor, which I think is something we might look to correct as we come back for the ordinance. But I do appreciate the update, but as we're following this, I think we also need to follow the money that goes with anything that adds enforcement, because it's great for the state to say they're going to do enforcement of sales to minors, but if they're not going to fund it and staff it at any significant level, that was part of the whole initiative in tobacco licensing that got into the chip in the first place, was to try and establish more robust enforcement of sales to minors and prevent those sales to minors. So there may still be need to keep a parallel program at the county level to not so much to take over that responsibility from the state, but just to add to that and enhance that capability. Because, we all understand that most people, once they reach adulthood, generally won't make the choice to pick up a habit that's going to be that destructive to their health. It's usually somebody that starts it as a teenager because it's cool that ends up addicted and keeps that habit through adulthood. So really important to interrupt that cycle. Any other questions about the legislation? Did you have something you wanted to add?
Chairman Bozovich, I appreciate your comments. I'll have to look back in 2546 when I actually participated in one of the work group meetings on it, and that question of clerk versus owner and who is responsible came up. So let me go back and look in the bill and just see how that was addressed. But your comments about enforcement and the lack of funding and the robustness, I think, there may be an opportunity where, depending on what happens, if 417 moves forward, that would provide some funding. Maybe there's an opportunity for some collaboration there where we could actually contract with the state to provide some of that. I'm just sort of speaking off the top of my head, but I know we've had, Lane County in particular has had pretty good conversations with the state about innovative service delivery, and perhaps there's another opportunity here for us to say, if we've already got the program established, why don't we step in and provide some services, some additional services, such that the state can feel secure that we're providing some of the stuff that's actually required of their agencies. It might be an opportunity for us, and not just sort of keep it in the back of our mind.
Excellent. Commissioner Farr.
The way OSHA looks at violations by staff is that a typical violation, a safety violation, is either a supervisory problem or a training problem. And that approach is best management practices in any any organization. That if somebody is not egregiously breaking the rules, then they need greater supervision or greater training. And so that's the approach I hope the state takes in this, is that the clerks don't want to break the law, and so they just need to be trained and supervised.
Yep. Any other questions for Mr. Kyler? Thank you, Mr. Kyler. That moves us on to announcements from the commissioners. Any announcements? I have one, and that is that Senator Merkley will be here in Harris Hall on Saturday this Saturday, the 14th, at 4 o'clock, and I believe there'll be a brief meeting at 3:30 beforehand with some local officials. He's invited me to attend, and I plan to attend as chair of the board. There's space for one other board member to attend also, but I do not want to have a quorum present, so we don't have to notice the meeting. But a quorum can be present during the town hall because we won't be conducting county business during the town hall. So just to make board members aware of that, he's extended that invitation out to other board members to attend that 3:30 meeting for local officials, elected officials, prior to the town hall. And then the town hall will begin at 4. And I think Mayor Piercy is going to have the opportunity to introduce Senator Merkley. It may be one of his last town halls in the city of Eugene during her term, so he's extending that honor to her. So it should be an interesting event for citizens of Lane County, an opportunity for everyone to hear from one of our 2 U.S. senators. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda team requests and work session requests. Any requests from the board? Commissioner Sorensen.
I mentioned earlier in response to public comment that I thought the board should have a work session on the issues of the mentally ill in our community, and I think we could broaden it to the mentally ill and homelessness, separate from any cities or separate from any state or federal action, more a briefing. So I'll make a request that we do that, and we can get information from staff at such a briefing if the other commissioners think this is something they think we should spend time on.
And I will concur with that request because the model has changed significantly over the last several years, particularly with the establishment of the CCO. And it probably would be great to hear from staff exactly who's responsible for supplying those services, how they're funded, what's the county's involvement in some of those services, and what's actually Trillium and the CCO's involvement, what's the state's involvement. I think there, in some of the public comment we heard this morning, there was some misstatement of who actually runs what program. And it'd be useful maybe just to have that review of that system so we all have a full understanding and the public can hear how that system's run. And then we can talk about, what might be some objectives to improving that system and making it more responsive. So I concur with that request. Is there anyone? I thought I saw Commissioner Farr and Stewart with thumbs up, so that sounds like that's got at least physical acquiescence from at least 3 commissioners to be a future agenda item, so we'll add that to the list. Any other requests from commissioners? Seeing none, that gets us down to review of assignments. Mr. Mokahiski.
Well, I just heard one, so we will work on scheduling that work session likely sometime, I would say in April or May, because we want to make sure our staff has enough time to pull together the appropriate information, and that we also consider inviting some representatives from Trillium, the state, and other agencies. But we look forward to that discussion. We also will follow up, as we indicated from the public comment this morning that you heard from the 2 individuals related to the Heron Center. I do have a meeting, I believe, that we just scheduled for Thursday to talk both with Health and Human Services staff and HACSA staff to look at the issues related to the county's role, supervisory authority related to that center, as well as the impacts to HACSA. And the debt service issue that's been raised there. So I will plan to update the board at the very least next Tuesday at your meeting, and we can have a discussion about any additional formal follow-up or discussion at the board beyond that. You approved the letter or bringing back a letter, so we'll have Mr. Kyler draft that for next week's consent calendar related to the residency program. And that is everything that I heard.
I think there was a request from Commissioner Sorensen about listing plans.
Yes, thank you. I do have that. So we'll look at the lane livability catalog of plans that they put together. We'll work on linking that from our strategic plan website as well as any other plans. So that might take a little bit of time to pull all those together, but I think that's a good suggestion to try to create easy access to all the different planning documents that are out there.
One slight improvement or clarification: when you do these summaries of what has happened in the board meeting, I think it's good to put some dates on those, so that even if, like today, you wouldn't know how long that might all take. You might give it like 6 weeks, or give it a period of time so that it will come back as being accomplished, as opposed to not putting it on there. And then what usually happens is at the end of the calendar year, these things all pile up, and the agenda team then has a list of things. Sometimes the context is lost between the now in the cycle and toward the end of the year. So it's just a suggestion.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, we do keep an Excel spreadsheet of all assignments that are generated from board meetings. We track the date that it was requested, the commissioner that requested, who we're assigning it to, and then the target date for completion. And so we track that. We then discuss it at the agenda team. I think it's provided to commissioners as well. So we do have a process for documenting all of the assignments that are requested and ensuring that there are dates that align with. I'm a little reluctant at the end of the meeting to assign a date, because sometimes it takes a little time to figure out how long each assignment will take, but just wanted to assure you that we do have tracking and follow-up for anything that you request.
And I believe Diana Jones sends this document out to all the commissioners about once a week. Do you receive this on a regular basis, Commissioner Sorensen? Thank you. Which is the tracking of those assignments. Yeah, Commissioner Stewart.
I was just going to add that I think Steve said it pretty well, but what we find is that Diana keeps really close tabs of this, and we have time certains ahead, and we just want to make sure that we don't overbook or lay something over the top. When the board gives direction and we hear a date, there seems to be an obligation to make sure that that comes back at that time, and if we have a conflict, we have to deal with it. So I want to assure you that Diana hears these and tries to pencil them in, and we confer on the dates the very next meeting in agenda setting. So we're not going to let anything slip up or pile up, trust me.
I never worry, because I know Diana's watching. She's capturing all of this, and she won't let us off the hook.
Even now.
That's right.
Yes. So no further review of assignments. Then the board is going to move into executive session, and there's no need with the executive session to come out for any decision making. So I'm going to recess the board meeting into executive session, and then we will reconvene in the regular session. Oh, actually, sorry, that's next week. I apologize. I was thinking about Wednesday board work session, and I will make note of that for board members. Next week we do have a Wednesday work session at 9 a.m., so don't forget to keep that open in your calendars. I will adjourn after executive session, so we will not be reconvening until next Tuesday at 9 a.m. at our regular board meeting. So at this time, the Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. This executive session will be held pursuant to ORS 1926602D, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed above. And we will not be coming back out in the public section after this, so we will be adjourning from there. So we are recessed into executive session.